Awesome people, inspiring stories, the Living the Dream podcast. Welcome back, everyone, to the Living the Dream podcast. I have a stud here with me today, and I can't wait for you to meet him. This is Sidney Kushner, and I said it correctly, and I'm so proud of myself. One for one. This is Sidney Kushner. He grew up in Pittsburgh and founded Connecting Champions as a 19-year-old after his friend Lauren passed away from cancer. He graduated with a degree in applied mathematics from Brown University. That's right, Brown University. Sidney was named a top 100 student entrepreneur in the United States by Stanford University. He was featured in Harvard Business Review and Forbes and honored in Pittsburgh's inaugural class of 30 under 30. I told you he was a stud, and he is. Sidney, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. You're really pumping me up here. I don't know if I can live up to this.
Well, actually, we're done with the show, so thanks for coming on. We're out of here.
Right. You got to go out on top.
That's right.
Take a bow and leave.
Well, Sidney, I mean, we'll get into that whole bio because that's just insanely impressive. Can you take us back to before you were a 19-year-old? And I want to ask you some questions about, you don't get into Brown and Stanford and all these Ivy League schools without having an insane work ethic. So can you take us back to your childhood and where you learned to just be such a hard worker, or maybe you're just naturally talented? You tell us.
Oh, I don't know if I don't know what the right answer is there, but my parents would certainly say that I'm just naturally talented,
Of course.
Of course. But I grew up in a family where I was constantly just hearing stories of my grandparents and of my parents and the history of how we lived the American dream. And my family came here, we're Jewish, to escape the pogroms of Eastern Europe. And we came to America, and the classic, like, came with 17 cents in your pocket sort of thing. And we were really fortunate to, my grandfather started a fur store in New York and in New Jersey, and my grandmother, her dad started my great grandfather started a fur store. My great grandfather on my grandma's side. Sorry, I'm
No, I get it. I'm with you.
Started a candy shop, and so it was one of those things where I was just constantly learning about making your own and being able to look at your community and say, what are some missing pieces of the puzzle, and how can I put my family first and make sure that that my job here is to create something good in the world, to create a footprint. And so I was really fortunate that it was just drilled into my head, one, the importance of school and education, the importance of working hard, but also I remember regularly my grandfather and my dad would always tell my sister and I, we just want you to remember, you'll never be the smartest person in the room. And it was always like half a joke, but as I've gotten older, it was a great lesson to learn in humbleness is making sure that that it is putting in the work that's what's really important. And you'll never be the smartest, you'll never be the best, you'll never be the kindest, but you can be you. And that's something that no one else can be in the world. And so I'm really fortunate to have a family that no matter what decision I made, I knew that I had a whole group of people behind me. And that made me feel, in a lot of ways, invincible when I was a teenager, when I was a little kid also.
I love that. You can be you. I wrote that down. And I have to disagree with one thing. I think in this room, between the two of us, you're probably the smartest person in this room, but maybe outside of that, maybe not.
I'm talking about in my room. My cat is
okay.
Definitely smarter than
So basically, I mean, this makes a ton of sense. You're getting these values instilled in you in such a young age. And it seems like there's some entrepreneurial values in there as well, which we'll get into that in a second as far as what journey you took. But can you also walk us through what happened when you were 19 years old? Because for listeners and viewers, I don't know the story either. And obviously it's a tragedy, but it almost had like an inspiring effect on your life. Can you just walk us through what happened and how it changed you?
Yeah, it's you know, it's very. I'm always very interested in sort of hearing people's founding stories when they start something, because there's always talk of that light bulb moment, but you don't know that that light bulb is turning on until well after the fact. And so I look back and I didn't realize at the time how much my friendship with this girl Lauren would change me for the rest of my life. And it was actually when I was 16 that I first met her. We were in a choir together, and I remember sitting on the choir room floor one day, and our teacher said to us, "Your friend Lauren has been diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. She won't be in choir, she won't be in school. Today, she is in the hospital getting her first round of cancer treatment." And, you know, it was so hard to conceptualize all of that at once and what that meant. And, you know, my grandfather had been diagnosed with cancer when I was really little, but I didn't remember. I didn't remember that, and this was the first time that someone I knew had been diagnosed. And sure enough, we didn't see her again for 6 months as she was in and out of the hospital getting treatment. And one of the questions that kept ringing through my head was, what can I do to be a helpful friend right now for someone who's clearly going through so much isolation? And, you know, this was pre-Facebook days, pre-texting days. There was really no way for us to know how she was doing. And as a 16-year-old, I couldn't quite find that answer. And so a couple years fast forwarding, I was applying to schools, and I was fortunate to get into Brown University. And I decided that I wanted to study applied mathematics and biology. And somehow between that math and science, it would get me into the world of pediatric oncology, of childhood cancer. And my friend passed away right around that time. And right around when she passed away, I realized that, you know, sitting in organic chemistry and multivariable calculus classes were just not quite doing it for me. And so I started volunteering at the local children's hospital in Rhode Island. And I would walk into the room with a big smile on my face, and I would ask the kids, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And it was amazing to just see their eyes light up as they shared that they wanted to be a dancer, a hockey player, and everything in between. Because you could tell that in that moment, they totally forgot about having cancer, and they were just kids again. And I can get into, you know, the next chapter, but those were the two moments in my life that I think really shaped my entire future. And so that's a little bit of my story leading up to when I was 19 years old. And yeah, so I could get into the rest, but that's, you know.
No, that was a perfect background. I mean, I can't even imagine what you were going through in your mind and in your heart. I guess I was fortunate enough growing up that I didn't have, you know, I didn't lose anyone close. I can't imagine how I would even react. One question in all of that I heard from you, and I want to ask a follow-up to that is, I often talk about powerful questions that you ask yourself, and I think you just hit one right on the head. You could have easily said, why is this happening to me? You know, why me? You know, in just negative questions. But I wrote down what you said. You said, what can I do to be helpful to her? And my question is, how important are these questions that you ask yourself, and how important are they to ask optimistic and positive, powerful questions versus the opposite?
Yeah, I mean, in there's like I see it in the world of childhood cancer that I'm in, and then I see it in the world outside of that. And especially within the world of childhood cancer, I remember when my friend was diagnosed, my only understanding of childhood cancer was from the St. Jude commercials. And St. Jude does wonderful work, but I was expecting, when I was walking in the room to volunteer with kids, that the lights would all be turned off everyone would be crying. Every child would look like they're on their deathbed. And I found out very, very quickly that the kids want absolutely none of that. And you walk into the room, and if you can walk in without asking them anything about their cancer, telling them anything about their cancer, or doing anything about their cancer, and you just treat them as a kid in the way that they want to be treated, everything changes. And that's something that I learned from our families, is that everyone calls them cancer kids, but they call themselves kids. And there's that disconnect. And if you can ask those questions that help show that I'm seeing you as who you want to be, not as who everyone else is seeing you as, or everyone else is pitying you as, all of a sudden, like, it just, you see that light bulb moment in their eyes, and it brings, they're able to bring their brightness into our worlds that they're just like aching to bring. So
I
I
love how you say that. I think that's so, I wouldn't think about it that way either. And I think what you mean is, if you could have gone in there and said, oh, how tough, how tough is this? And then it snowballs into a negative firestorm, I'm sure.
Yeah. And to be fair though, like on the other side, I learned, especially from the teens and young adults, and just outside in my world, I've dealt with a lot of personal issues with mental illness ever since I was a teenager. And one of the things that I learned as I was struggling with my mental illness from teens and young adults is how important it is, like you said, to ask those tough questions and just sit with them. And some of the most important moments in my life, some of the most important lessons I've ever learned, are at times when there has been a really scary question in the room, whether that's in my own room, in the room in the hospital for another, and you just sit there in silence and recognize that that there is space to feel what we feel, and that there is room to not feel it alone. And so I see there's like that dichotomy, is it's important to ask those questions of helping kids be who they want to be, helping all of us be who we want to be. But there's also the importance of asking questions that acknowledge who we currently are, and saying that that's okay. Who you are is the most beautiful way that you can be. And we should all recognize that in each other, because a lot of times we can't recognize it in ourselves.
Man, you're like just this wealth of he's dropping knowledge on us. This is, plus I love how quick, like, we just go deep. I think that's so cool that you're willing to open up. And for the record, anyone watching, Sidney and I, it's not like we've known each other for 30 years. I mean, he's opening up quick, and this is so insightful. So I appreciate it. And just be careful with big words like dichotomy, because I might be struggling. I might lose you. All right. So let's get back a little bit into your story a little bit more. We saw all the accolades, which I don't think I've ever seen anybody with Stanford University, Brown, 30 under. Like, can you walk us through a little bit of the schooling and being an Ivy League school, and how you were received and how you did there? And was it a great experience? What'd you learn and all that stuff?
Yeah, I certainly appreciate all of the kind words. I often struggle with talking about my, all the names, because
I'm going to make you talk about it.
Thank you. But quite frankly, I grew up with a lot of privilege. I was able to go to a great school. I was privileged with my health, with my family, and I was able to go to a school that rewarded me for that privilege. And I don't think that I certainly don't think that it is a reflection on who is better and who is not, who is smarter, who is not. And I am just very fortunate for the privilege that I've had, and the path that I've been able to sort of push through. And that said, Brown Brown University is a really special place. I mean, it has its reputation for being very granola, and a little hippy dippy at times also, but some of the stories are true and some aren't. There's definitely some urban legends about our school, but one thing that I was really lucky about, and I'll be honest, like this, I had no idea this existed when I was first starting there, when I was applying there. But Brown has one of the top, at least at the time, one of the top 5 student entrepreneurship organizations or schools in departments in the entire country. And it had its own department specifically for social entrepreneurship, for nonprofits and social enterprises. And like I said, I mean, I went to college wanting to study math and biology, figuring somehow that would get me into this world, this field. But I never envisioned myself as an entrepreneur. I never envisioned myself starting something. And to be in a position where it was literally just right there in front of me, you know, that was absolutely essential. And I had a hard time in college with, like I said, with mental health challenges, and they were some of the hardest years of my life. But at the same time, it provided the resources that I needed in order to get to the point that I am in today. And so for that part, I'm really grateful. And one thing that I really appreciate about the school that I went to is that we're definitely the black sheep of a lot of the schools that are for whatever reason harder to get into. And a big part of that is because it is very much not money driven. It is very much community based. Like, I remember touring some other schools, and we were asking about classes, and a lot of it would be talking about like the hyper competitiveness, right? You're preparing for an exam, and you're afraid to study with other people because you need to do better than everyone else, because otherwise it drags the curve up. And so that was something that at my school and in my group of friends, we just threw out the window, and it was very much about collaboration. And I say all that because it's consistent with something we talk about in my family a lot that I was really looking for, which is that when you love someone, when you care about someone, it is not about maximizing your own personal contentedness or their personal contentedness. It's not always about selflessness or selfishness. It's about mutual contentedness, and being able to ask ourselves, what can we do that brings the most value to us as a unit? And we looked at that as a family often as well. And that was something that I was fortunate to have in college, in my group of friends, and in the school that I went to as well.
Oh, I'm so glad you walked us through all that, because I'm writing things down. I wrote down humble because clearly you're proving how humble you are. I mean, this guy works his butt off and is extremely intelligent. But I think in order to do what you're going to tell us about, you need to have a lot of humbleness. And you're such a human being. I mean, I love how you say you went through these struggles. You had some problems with the mental illness, and you're not afraid to say it. I mean, I struggled with alcohol for a decade. I'm not afraid to say it. And I just think for anybody watching or listening to this, it's okay. Nobody's perfect. We all have these setbacks. We're all going through something. And I appreciate you sharing that. So can you go into what I can't wait to hear about, which is that transition? Well, I shouldn't say transition, because you started Connecting Champions when you were 19. Can you walk us through how it started, what it is now, and the mission? Because it's just a powerful thing that you're doing.
Thanks. Yeah, and so that's like a great place for me to pick up where I left off, which is, you know, seeing those kids' eyes light up, and that they were just kids in those moments. And what was really important about that for me specifically is that it changed it challenged an assumption that I'd had. It changed a narrative that was in my mind. The assumption was that I would walk into this room and that, like we spoke about, that you'd walk into a room full of sadness and full of hopelessness. And one of the things that I've learned that is really, really important in order to create lasting change is to understand what assumptions you're making. And quite frankly, try to make as few assumptions as possible and ground what you're doing in reality, in listening, and in facts. And so that just turned everything upside down for me, being able to learn from the kids in that way, and learn from the way that they shared their heart, and their passion. And so I was getting really excited to see their excitement, and like what a gift it is for someone to share their passion with you. And so I was like really excited about that. But on the same coin, flipping it over, I was talking with parents and doctors, nurses, social workers, researchers, and I was learning that 84% of kids are surviving cancer medically, and I had no idea it was that high. But they're surviving with very serious psychosocial, developmental, and emotional side effects, not just during treatment, but that last oftentimes or sometimes for the rest of their lives. And everyone seemed to be talking about this need for long-term social support, and no one seemed to be providing it. And so I decided as a 19-year-old that my job was to find the organization that provided this support so that I could volunteer for them and help make an impact in that way. And so I searched high and low. I could not for the life of me find it. And so finally I sat down. I was able to get a meeting with the chief pediatric oncologist in Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, where I'm from. And I sat down and I said, Dr. Ritchie, here's my story. I told him about my friend Lauren, about my passion for helping kids and her memory. And I said, everyone seems to be talking about this need for long-term social support. Where is it? I want to volunteer. And he said, it's not there. It's something that when everyone is saying we can't find it, it's because it does not currently exist in the way that families are asking for it. And so in my naive 19-year-old mind, I said, well, I'll give it a shot. And 10 years later, here I am. And we hosted a pilot program in Pittsburgh with just a couple of kids. Both of them wanted to be baseball players when they grew up. So we paired them with some local baseball players. And then we expanded our pilot program to New England, where I was in school. And I was working full-time during my senior year on the organization. And my goal was I made a promise to myself and a promise to my parents that I would build the infrastructure for the organization and raise funds so that by the time I graduated, I would be able to have at least 1 year of organizational stability where I was able to make next to nothing, but at least I could tell my parents I was getting a paycheck for, for a full year and really give it a shot. And I was fortunate that I was able to raise some money through business plan competitions or elevator pitch competitions or grants, and all different sorts of, just bootstrapping and doing everything you can. And so I graduated in 2013. I rewarded myself with 3 days off and immediately launched 3 days later the program formally here in Pittsburgh. And I was able to hire my first staff in 2014. And we developed a pretty historic partnership with Children's Hospital in 2015, where we've been fully integrated into their hospital care team. So in the same way, when a child is diagnosed, they're introduced to their doctor, their social worker, their nurse, they're introduced to us as well. And as of next month, we will be able to say that we have launched our second physical location in West Virginia, which is, I have actually not announced publicly. So this is the debut. We are.
Yes. All right. We're getting some big time information.
There you go. And we have launched in the COVID era a virtual mentorship program in now 5 cities across the country. So it's been it's been 9 years since we were founded. Our staff is up to 5, and which feels huge to me, by the
Yeah.
way. And we have paired, this year we will be celebrating our 250th friendship for kids ages 3 to 22, or kids and young adults. And we've paired kids with over 50 different professions. Most recently, we've paired kids with shark experts in the zoo, and with fashion designers who make dresses and everything, ghost hunters, constitutional lawyers, like whatever the kids can imagine. Our job is to help them envision themselves in that world after they beat the illness.
I love that. And just this is a perfect segue into, can you give us, just so everyone fully understands what exactly is going on, 250 friendships, can you give us an example of one of them and just sort of how it works, and maybe a success story? Clearly you don't have to use names or anything, but just a story that is powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. So our job is to walk into the kids' room and ask that special question: what do you want to be when you grow up? And or what do you love? A lot of kids don't quite know what they want to be when they grow up yet, and that's okay.
I don't know what I want to be when I grow up either.
You and me both. um, and uh, and we then, once they tell us what they want to be, our job is to get to know them, get to know their personality, their developmental, social, emotional needs, so that we're finding someone in the local community who not only does what they want to do, but specifically matches their personality in the things that they need. And one of the things that that we do very intentionally is we try not to find famous people to be mentors for the kids. And our goal is to find people who can walk into the room and the child can say, I can do that. I can be like them when I grow up. And to have someone that is next door in the same community, who you can really, one of my favorite friendship moments was with one of our 17-year-olds. Alex wanted to be a space technologist when he grew up.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we paired him with a local CEO and entrepreneur of a company called Astrobotic here in Pittsburgh. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but
No.
they won. I hadn't either. They won Google's X Prize, which is the $1 million competition. They got a grant, or they got a grant from NASA just this year to build they've partnered with DHL, and they are considered the DHL to the moon and to the International Space Station.
Wow.
So anytime someone needs to ship something to the moon or the ISS, they call this company in Pittsburgh, and they help make it happen. And so we were able to pair Alex with the CEO, who went to Carnegie Mellon University, a local college, and started this organization when he was a grad student. And he was giving Alex a tour and talking about his education, and Alex just stopped all of a sudden, and he looked at John and said, you know what? You're me of the future. And I just thought that was like so awesome and adorable and like so quirky and wonderful.
Yes.
And that's what I love about it, is that for our kids and our young adults, we're able to help them envision their life after cancer. And so it's hard to say like what's one of your favorite friendships or what's a great moment. It's like I'm just flooded with all of these memories. And I would say that one of my very favorites is we met a 13-year-old girl. She was in 8th grade, named Sophia, who, as we were asking, what do you want to be when you grow up, wouldn't even let us finish the question before she said, I know exactly what I want to be when I grow up. I want to be a constitutional lawyer that focuses either on criminal justice reform or immigration law. And we were just like, whoa, the 13-year-old, and she is like on it.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we were blown away. And so we found a local constitutional lawyer in her community who who focused on those two elements of what Sophia was interested in. And Ellen was the constitutional lawyer, and Ellen would visit Sophia when she was in the hospital. And one of the things that's really important to us is that we are there every time the child or the teen or the young adult is there, so that they know, instead of the hospital being just the place of illness, pricks and prods and talk of cancer, that they know that their special friend is waiting there just for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so Ellen would be waiting for her in the hospital, and they started what they called a two-woman book club. And Ellen picked out a book. If you've heard of Bryan Stevenson, his book Just Mercy, he's one of my heroes. He started something called the Equal Justice Initiative, and he spent his entire life representing inmates on death row who were wrongly convicted.
I've heard of him.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, he is incredible. And so they read his book, and they would have their two-woman book club. And as Sophia got better, she asked her doctors if it would be okay to meet Ellen out of the hospital, and they were able to meet out in public, not in a big crowd yet, but they were able to meet in public and chat about the book, and they finished the book. And then to this day, their friendship has been going on, I think, for 2 years. And Ellen has brought Sophia to mock trials to help be one of the jury members, which is really cool, and to an event with the Innocence Project, where Sophia was able to meet one of the Central Park Five, which is really powerful, obviously. And then one thing that was really, really fun was they found out that Bryan Stevenson, the author, was coming to Pittsburgh for the Pittsburgh Speaker Series.
Oh,
And
man.
so Ellen asked us on the down low, like, could you try to pull some strings and, like, can we surprise Sophia and try to get tickets? And of course, like, it's a sold out event. Tickets are thousands of dollars, but we did our thing. We pulled some strings. We did our networking, and sure enough, we were able to get a couple tickets, not just to his speech, but also to the, like, intimate event beforehand of like 30 people. There was a dinner before he spoke, and it was amazing. I mean, Sophia was at that point 14 years old, and we're going around the dinner table, and people are talking about, hi, I'm so and so, I'm the president of this, or I am the I'm the chief executive officer of that. And then as everyone's introducing themselves at the dinner table, and then we get to Sophia, and she says, I'm Sophia, I'm 14 years old, I was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago, I'm about to go into my freshman year in high school, and I want to be a constitutional lawyer when I grow up. And I mean, the whole room just froze. And when she got to meet Bryan Stevenson, she had questions prepared and everything, and it was just absolutely beautiful to be able to see her take that moment, and Ellen standing right there next to her as they were truly helping Sophia envision her life, and to meet and to really get a feel for that entire world and picture herself in it.
This is amazing. I mean, how could you not smile when you hear some of these stories? I mean, connecting champions, you guys are you're delivering such a huge amount of hope too, I'm sure, to these kids who get some bad news, but then they see this and they think, oh, I can do that in 5, 10, 20, 30 years. It's just, oh, this is just warms my heart. And I need to ask you about, if someone's listening or watching this and has a skill, or they like, how does it work? Is somebody just call you guys and tell you what they specialize in, and then if one of the kids says, I want to be this, then you connect them? Or how does the connection happen?
That's exactly it. And so we have sort of two pathways. We have people who reach out to us who and it's not just people who have cool jobs. It's people who have interesting hobbies as well. I mean, we have kids who just love science experiments, love robotics. And so we pair them with people who also love that, and they're able to, I mean, companionship is such an important piece of what we do as well. And like I said, helping kids know that someone is waiting there just for them, helping be able to sit in silence, or to be able to bring a special activity that they're really excited about into the hospital, or bring them out in the community to go somewhere that really energizes them. So it's really anyone, right? Anyone who cares and who has their own passions, which is everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have people who reach out to us through our website, connectingchampions.org, and you can go to Ways to Help and reach out to us through the volunteering page. And we have our pipeline of mentors and companions that are already in our pipeline, so that when a kid signs up, if we know someone who loves what they love, who's passionate about what they're passionate about, we already have people in our system that we can pair them with. But also, we have a lot of kids who ask for things that are totally new to us. So when we had a girl recently tell us that she wanted to be a sled dog racer when she grows up, we did not have any sled dog racers in our pipeline. And Google is definitely one of our friends. And it's amazing just how many people, when you call them up, you cold call them, cold email them, and tell them, hey, a kid with cancer wants to be like you when they grow up. I mean, people have been so generous with their time and their passion and their and just their loving kindness. And so we find a lot of mentors that way also, quite frankly. And especially now that we've launched this virtual friendships program, we're looking for mentors all over the country. And we are also, I mean, if anyone knows a child who has cancer, a young adult who has cancer, our program is for everyone, especially with this virtual component. And so we want to make sure that any child, anywhere, anytime, can get the social support that they need in order to better survive this cancer journey.
I mean, you make a great point. It's almost like COVID has helped expand who you can reach out to, because everything is so virtual now. So it's
Yeah.
it's feel like you're always good at finding the positive in a setback. And I have to ask you something on a more personal journey. I mean, we heard about your background, your schooling. You've clearly accomplished so much. You started this nonprofit that's over 10 years old now, right? I can't help but think about the whole story and think, okay, here's a guy who could have easily, as you alluded to, gone a different route, started out making $200,000 a year and been fine financially early on. But instead, to me, you chose a purpose that clearly filled your heart. And it's clear to me that you're living your dream and living your purpose and living your mission. Can you speak to how someone listening or watching this, and maybe they're choosing between $150,000 job or $100,000 a year job that they don't want versus a passion and something that they truly have a burning desire to do, and it pays $40,000 a year? How did you make that decision? Because to me, I have to acknowledge you, because I think that is one of the most amazing, humble, incredible things you could do. Can you speak to that? And was it an easy decision to make? Can you give us a little insight there?
Yeah, that it's a hard question for sure. And it was the easiest decision of my life in one way and the hardest decision of my life in another way. And I remember, I like remember the moment when I decided I want to take the leap. And instead of having this be a student group that I passed along, that just sort of lived in its own little bubble, I wanted to try to make this my career and make this something that can grow nationwide. And it was absolutely terrifying. It was thrilling and terrifying at exactly the same time. And I remember calling my parents, and I didn't know how they would respond. And that really scared me because, like I said, I mean, they've always supported me, but also I grew up in a family where all of my grandparents had they had like professional tracks. You know, it's like you go to school, you study this, then you go to grad school, or you go straight into the workforce, and it's already mapped out for you. And when I was telling them that I wanted to do something that had absolutely no map, I was terrified at how they would respond. And I was really fortunate that they were completely supportive, and I needed that. Just with, especially as a teenager, I didn't quite have the self-confidence to be able to do it without them, without that support system, and all of the emotions that are taxing about. One of the things I talk a lot about in the social justice world, nonprofit world, or just something where you're focused even in a for-profit on creating goodness in the world, because that's not just a nonprofit trait, is how hard it is to wake up every morning knowing that there is a problem in the world that exists. People are hurting in some way, doing everything you can that day to help solve it, and go to bed each night knowing that on paper it looks exactly the same despite your best efforts. And somehow you have to convince yourself that you are doing good, important work. And that's something that I've always struggled with, um, and that makes that leap really, really difficult. Um, but the other thing that the other half of it, the reason I'm bringing it up is, like, in a lot of ways, I don't feel like I have a choice. And I don't say that in a way that I'm being forced into it. It's just, I wake up every morning and I know this is, I need, if I am not a part of this, I am not myself. And so that's a really weird way of saying, like, yes, I'm choosing it, but also I'm not choosing it. Um, and then the other half of it, just like the money side of it, is that maybe this is a controversial thing to say. I don't know, but I believe that money has two purposes. It is to give you safety, and it is to give you joy or contentedness or comfort or whatever you want to define it as. And if you gave me an extra $100,000 a year, I would I would spend it on being able to do exactly what I do, to be able to wake up and work with amazing kids, to be able to be in conversations like this with other people who are changing the world, and somehow be in the same breath as you. Like, it is something that gives me that contentedness, that joy, that I would pay every dollar I had in order to do that. And so, yeah, if I'm, what's the purpose of making money if not to use it for something that that makes you happy, that makes your family happy, as long as it is enough that you can take care of yourself, that you can take care of your family as well. And so, to me, that's an easy decision. I could work a desk job and be miserable and make 60,000 more dollars a year. I mean, I'm just picking a random number.
Yeah.
I would not be, yeah, but anyway, or I could take that money and invest it into something that would make me happy, and that's an easy decision.
Oh, this is so good. Sidney, he's such a good guy, isn't he? I mean, it's just incredible the stuff that you're doing, and you'll never say, I hope at some point well, maybe I ask you this. Can you at this point or at any point, since you're so humble, and I feel like you're just extremely humble, do you give yourself moments daily, weekly, monthly, yearly to go, wow, like I've created something that's having a huge impact on these kids? Or are you just so into it, it's hard to kind of give yourself that pat on the back?
I'm not great at it, to be perfectly honest, and I struggle. When I think about what type of leader or manager I am, there are a few different types that I strive to be, and that I just sort of am magnetized towards. But one of them is I'm a deflecting, absorbing manager. When something bad happens, something bad happens or someone does something wrong, I absorb the blame. It's on me, guys. Don't worry about it. And if something good happens, whether it's me or someone else, I immediately deflect it and say, that's all you guys. And that's, I'm not trying to say that in a way that, like, oh, look at me, I'm so selfless. It's because I think it does feed a lot of burnout. I don't think it's the healthiest thing to do. It's something I learned from my grandmother. My grandmother was a hospice care social worker for her whole life, and so she taught me that, and the importance of of recognizing that you can't do anything alone, right? And so I very much feel like I, I that yes, I'm the founder of this organization, but I believe that there are so many other people in the world who are co-founders of it as well. Like, just because I was the first person that was there doesn't mean I am the only founder. Um, but that said, I definitely I definitely need to learn how to celebrate more, celebrate successes, and I struggle with that. I've struggled with that my whole life. Is like something good happens, and the first place my brain goes to is like, okay, great. How do we leverage this for more goodness?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a double-edged sword. It helps. It helps with that determination, that motivation, but it also doesn't create that time to like really replenish and appreciate where you fit in the world, what your role is in the world.
I think I just need to start texting you every day, Sydney, look how good you're doing. This is awesome. And then maybe eventually we can get it to sink in. But I think the biggest takeaway of the whole chat just happened with your leadership. And it sounds like you learned it from parents and grandparents, but to have a leader, when something good happens, they point at other people as being the reason. And then if something bad happens, it's all your fault. And it's so weird because I just posted on social media today, I posted, it's all my fault. And what I meant was, if you shoulder all the blame for anything, whether it's you're in bad health or you're in a bad relationship, if it's all your fault, then you have the power to change it. And I think that's similar in
I
your
love
situation,
that.
right?
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what it sounds like you just said. But to have a leader where something good happens and I mean, you take 1% of it and spread out the other 99, I think that is a huge takeaway. And I'm sure for a lot of people, including myself, that can be tough to do. But I think that's just, oh, that's so powerful. Um,
Thank
what's, because you brought up happiness, and it sounds like you're living in your happiness, your purpose. What is happiness to you? Is there,
Oh man.
can you, I know it's not, it sounds like it's a simple question, but I think it's one of the hardest ones to answer for myself, especially too.
Yeah, I'm with you. And one caveat that I want to say too, and I know this is a controversial thing as well, but I believe that sadness is as important as happiness.
Mm,
And I've learned that in my life personally, and I've learned that professionally. But you can't have one without the other. And there's something, happiness feels good, and sadness creates good. And I say that because I think back to all of the moments when I knew that my friends would be there for, that this friend will be there for me forever, or I can count on my family for anything. And they're not during the happy moments when we're riding a roller coaster. Of course, those are great memories, but it's like it's when my great grandmother died, or it's when one of us didn't get into the school we wanted to, or when when something in the organization happened and like we didn't get funding and I was worried that we wouldn't be able to make it. You know, just these different moments where we sat down and I knew, just with that person being next to me and through that eye contact and just through the time and love, those are the people that will be there for me forever. And that's why I really tried to recognize when feelings of sadness or times of sadness are coming over me, to cherish them and not just try to put them in my box, or like, you know, I've never been a proponent of like when someone's crying saying it's okay, don't cry. I say it's okay, cry.
mm-hmm.
And I try to practice that for myself as well. And when I, you know, for me, happiness is presence,
Mm.
with a C, not a T. And um,
I'm glad you said that. That's funny.
yeah. Um, and and I think it's, we live in a world where our phones are on all day, and we're getting emails nonstop, and people are constantly asking us to do something, go somewhere for something, whatever. And when there are those moments where no matter what's going on in the world, you just feel this like peace flow through you, and just whether you call it happiness or joy or contentedness or even sadness, that to me are the best moments in the world. And you know, I have this theory that everybody has certain, like, you know, at any given moment in time, people have different things that fit that bill, but that they change over as you grow. And I try to always write down what are the things that immediately ground me, so that when they're happening, I know to make sure that I'm appreciating that they're happening. So like a silly thing for me is the rain. There's something about the rain that no matter how hard my day is, when I'm standing in the rain, it's just perfection. Like everything just dissipates, disappears. And so I try to recognize whenever it's raining, like run outside, go run in the rain, so that I'm not taking it for granted.
I cannot believe you're saying this. And this is going to come out not until like around August, but I just had 2 videos where I'm outside in the rain, and I just started doing this. I can't believe you just said that. I seriously cannot believe you just said that. This is insanity. I'm with you. I couldn't agree. I've never felt so alive and like I'm 6 years old
Yes.
than running around there in the rain.
Yes. Yes.
I'm,
I'm right there with you.
I'm so glad that I have some other crazy person who agrees.
If ever you need a crazy person, you can always count on me. I'm right there with you.
I think you said something that really got me thinking. I'm sure listeners and viewers as well. I think I have this right. Happiness feels good. Sadness creates good. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Because we may be the opposite in that, not the opposite, but I sometimes when something sad is happening or should be happening, I push it and go, no, I'm this optimistic, happy guy. I can't let that bother me. But I think you're really making a powerful statement about feel that, right? I mean, I'm not saying to live there for a month, but I mean,
Right.
for half an hour, if I need to cry and be sad, then that's okay, right?
Absolutely. It's I always say the biggest gift that one person can give another is their vulnerability.
Mm.
And sometimes that's giving the vulnerability to yourself, and sometimes it's giving it to people that you love and you trust. And I always think about, like, when someone says, hey, I'm really struggling, can I get some help, can you help me, um, how important those moments are, you know, how defining they are, um, and how proud we are when we're able to step up in that way. And I think that it's important that we recognize that we should give that gift to others also. And by giving that gift, we're inherently practicing our own healthy behaviors too, I think.
I think that's so true. And that's a just really good conversation right there. Uh, I'm excited to ask you something because this is probably my most fun question to ask somebody that's extremely humble like you, because it's like my way of getting you to slightly brag about yourself. But
Oh boy.
what do you, he has no idea this is coming, by the way. That's why I'm even more excited. What are you most proud of?
What am I most
And
proud
that's
of?
just open. It doesn't have to be connecting champions. It could be, but just open-ended. What are you most proud of?
Man, that's a hard question. Um, I would say that I was actually just journaling about this
Wow.
the other day. Yeah, I'm like tempted. I want to pull up my notes, but um, I think one of the things that I'm most proud of, and you know, I just think it's important to be transparent, is uh, is what I have been through in my life with mental illness, with depression. Um, I'm proud. I'm proud of where I am today, and you know, people. And I don't want to like turn the conversation, of course, but um, in a very weird way that's hard to explain. Depression, I is one of the most important things that I've ever experienced in my life, and one of the things I'm most grateful for that I've ever experienced in my life. because it helped me understand empathy. It helped me understand myself. It helped me understand my purpose in the world. And I don't wish it on anyone. I don't want anyone to have to go through that. But I also try to be really, I try to be proud of myself that I dealt with that I still deal with it in different ways, um, and that I'm able to be honest about it and vulnerable, because it's work. It's work, and I'm proud that I'm allowed to be able um, to say this is a part of who I am, and I want to share it. And um,
That's a great
so
response.
thanks. I would say honestly that's probably the thing that I am most proud of, at least personally, and then professionally it would be um, the relationships that I have with my coworkers and the people around me. Like I'm proud that what I'll say it this way. One of the things that brings me the most joy in my job, outside of being able to see the kids grow up, is when I see two of my coworkers have fun together, or joke, or hug each other, or whatever it may be. Because as the person who is responsible for building the culture, is responsible for hiring everyone, to be able to see two people that I brought onto our team hug each other in happiness or in sadness, like, gives me so much pride. Um, I'm proud of them, and I'm proud of the organization. And those, I would say, those are my two answers.
I think those are two really, really good answers. And thank you for opening up about a topic that I'm sure is, I know how personal that is. So thanks for being open about it. And I, I just have to, I don't know if this is a question or a statement, but I think about when I went through my trouble with alcohol, and it looked like from people seeing me that I had it all together and my life was great and I was just rolling
Yeah.
along. And now I think what it helped me with, which I think is the same thing you're saying, it helps me not to judge people, and hopefully including myself, because that person that looks like everything's going great and the pictures on social media are perfect, sometimes that's the one going through the toughest situation. So I appreciate
That's
you
right.
opening up about that.
Yeah, I appreciate your sharing also. It's I struggled with that. I mean, social media can be really valuable as a connector, but it can also be um, very isolating, because I remember when I was most struggling at my lowest points, going on social media, and it's you have there are two types of personalities on social media. It's the people who pretend to be happy all the time, or the people who are actually happy all the time.
Mm,
And whenever or have it together is another, you use that phrase, and I think that might be even more accurate. um, and to see people either project or actually show that they are always put together, when we're sitting in our own worlds feeling like things are crumbling, or think that there is a brokenness about us, is so isolating. And it makes it feel like I must be the only person that is feeling this, that is doing this, and I need to fix it, because I'm not supposed to be this way. And um and so when you share, when you share the experiences that you've been through, I mean, one of the things my grandma always taught me, and I can tell just in meeting you that you practice this too, is that my purpose in the world is to make sure that who whatever the person next to me is feeling, that they, whether it's good or bad, they know that they don't have to feel it alone.
ooh,
And
that's good.
um you just said that in the way that you talk about your um your struggles with alcohol as well, is we don't know that we are not alone until other people speak up and say, I've been there too, or I am there now. And so I really do sincerely appreciate that you're creating a space that I can share my challenges, and that you opened it up by sharing yours too. And I just really genuinely appreciate that. And I think to have a space is just so important, especially side by side everything else that we've talked about.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And this is just Well, we're going deeper than I ever thought, and I love that. That's the best. This is just great. I appreciate this. Okay, so last question before we go into what I call the final five. What's
Oh boy.
next? Yeah. And by the way, he has no idea. There's going to be a couple ones in there that
No,
you may be laughing or crying. I don't know. We're going to find out. Um, so what's next for Connecting Champions, or for Sydney, or both?
yeah. I I am really excited about this new chapter of the organization, being that we are transitioning from a local organization to a national organization. And my so I I came up with the idea for the organization on May 31st, 2010. So it was just over 10 years ago. And on May 31st, 2020, um, the big question in my mind was, look at all the things we've accomplished, and while looking at all the things we've accomplished in the last 10 years, what do I want to accomplish in the next 10 years? And it's a terrifying question, but also really exciting. And I see that in a lot of ways, this is it, is being able to build an organization that can help any kid, anywhere, anytime. And so that's what's next on a high level. Quite specifically, I mean, we are launching our second in-person program. We're building a brand new location in West Virginia, to help children across the entire state. And being a very rural state, they have very different challenges. And so we're really excited. We hired our first employee out of state. We have a West Virginia program coordinator. It's like we officially, just as of last week, are a registered nonprofit and business in another state, and I've read all of the new tax laws and super fun stuff. So anyway, sorry.
That's
I guess
great. No, this
I
is
geeked out. I
so
geek out
exciting.
sometimes.
Good. Hey, you should, or you're in the wrong space, right? That's great. Oh, so
Yeah.
you got, I mean, you have some big things happening now and happening in the future. I mean, you alluded to it a couple of times. You said national organization, so I have a feeling it's just going to keep growing.
Yeah, thank you. I sure hope so. That's the plan. And honestly, like, I was going to say, and personally, where I'm going, and it's just a constant reminder. One of the things that I've been trying to work on that I really struggle with is um, seeing myself as seeing myself as more than just the organization, more as that my successes and failures aren't entirely the successes and failures of Connecting Champions. And I always struggle with that. And so oftentimes when we talk about like strategic plans, right? I love doing strategic planning for work, and it's one of the things that I think that I'm best at, and yet I don't really do it in my personal life. And part of that is like I'm very content. I'm someone who wants things to stay the same. I love where I am, what I do, what I get to be, but also I just wanted to acknowledge also that it is hard. It's hard to define yourself, not just as your job, or not just as the thing that everyone asks about every time I talk with someone, even my family. It's like, oh, how's Connecting Champions going? And it's just every time I meet someone, oh, what do you do? And so it's hard. I've struggled with that over the years as
Yeah,
well.
that's to the difference between the two, because it seems like you're so involved in, I mean, you are Connecting Champions for the most part. You started the whole thing. Uh, okay, I just have to ask this before we go into this final five, just because you brought it up, and I'm so curious now. The whole idea of productivity, and I see what you're doing, or I have an idea of what you're doing day to day, which is a ton of things. How do you decide? And I've heard different philosophies on this, so I'm excited to hear what you're going to say. Are you a night before guy where you write down the 3 to 5 things you want to do the next day? Do you the morning of? Do you write down, or do you just already know and not have to do daily goals?
I am a combination of long-term goals, so planning things planning things far out. I mean, strategic planning, is something that is a huge part of what we do. So every year we have a team meeting that we call the Should We Exist meeting. And it's a terrifying question because it eventually, I hope that we don't need to exist. And then we ask, well, why? If the answer is yes, which so far it always has been, the answer is, well, why? What are the challenges in the world? If we were to scrap everything, wipe the slate clean, and build up an organization from scratch, what would it look like? And it helps our organization change each year. And so when we're making strategic plans, I also want to make sure that they're living, breathing documents. So I'm constantly trying to step back and say, where does this fit into the greater strategic picture? But I'm also someone that is a very, very spatial thinker. I don't naturally think linearly. So someone's saying something and I immediately I connect with something way over there that's seemingly unrelated or way over there. And I'm probably doing this either right now in this question or in this interview because one, I just naturally think that way. But two, I recognize that one of the things that I do that is unique to my team and maybe a little bit beyond that is my ability to creatively make connections, not just between people, but between ideas. And so in that sense, I'm just coming up with my to-do list right in the moment. I have Post-it notes everywhere all the time, which is not great. And I get made fun of at work a lot for that, but that's my world. So.
That's right. Oh, I love that. See, I love that, the getting inside your day-to-day life. And I think that's so interesting. All right. Are you ready? Final five. Are you ready, Sidney?
I don't know how. I won't know until at the end, I think.
You're right. All right. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You're going to see if you can answer in one sentence, even though they're tough questions. Let's see how you do.
Okay.
All right. How do you want to be remembered? I told you they're not easy.
No. I want to be remembered as someone that could be counted on.
See, I love that. Those simple answers, I think those are the most powerful. What are you the most thankful for?
My family.
Love it. Here comes my favorite question. If we see Sidney at some sort of a party of some sort and he's dancing, what is his go-to dance move?
I am known from my little cousin's bat mitzvahs to have invented the lightsaber dance, which I'll just let you imagine. So that...
I'm just thinking about Darth Vader with the lightsaber.
It's a 2-person dance.
Oh, 2-person dance.
It's a
Okay.
2-person dance.
Maybe we can dub in a video of him doing that or something. We'll figure out a way to do
that.
There
are no videos. That I have made sure of.
All right. What is the biggest obstacle you've overcome?
My depression.
Yeah. Who is your hero? That's the last one. Who's your hero?
My grandma.
Yeah, I love it. You just it's like all these, and I love that you just seem like you know yourself so well. Okay, in closing.
I should say my other hero outside my family is probably John Lewis.
John Lewis.
Who just passed away, and we will really miss him. But he's the congressman from South Carolina, from Georgia.
Yeah. John Lewis, and you also said who wrote Just Mercy?
Brian Stevenson.
I'm going to look him up. I want to read that book. Okay, just to close out, how can people find you? You already said the website, but say it again, and the social media and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, connectingchampions.org, and our handles are @connectingchampions or @connectchamps because Twitter forces us to do something as is in the nature of Twitter. But yeah, just join us. At connectingchampions.org, you can learn about volunteering. You can read stories on our blog of the different friendships that we've made possible over the years, and just all sorts of getting a good feel for for what we do. And one of the events that's coming up for us is we're hosting something in September called the Toast to 250. And it's to celebrate our 250 friendships all time. And we will, for anyone who gets a ticket, send mystery toast boxes that will all open at exactly the same time. One of our teens who wants to be a sports broadcaster when he grows up will lead us all in a toast, and we'll celebrate the history of the organization and its future. So that's another thing that people could keep an eye out for as well.
What's the date on that?
Oh gosh, we just finalized it. I think it's
September.
It's September 24th, I believe.
It's in mid to late September.
September 24th. It's a Thursday night.
Good. September 24th. Sign up now, and we can go on connectingchampions.org to get our tickets. Good. This is awesome. Thank you for your time, Sidney. What a great conversation. I mean, thanks for opening up. Thanks for going deep, and thanks for just letting us learn about what you're doing and your purpose and your mission and your passion. It's been a great conversation. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate you too. I'm sending you an e-hug over here.
I'm back at you. All right, virtual hugs. I am too. It's killing me to not be able to hug people.
I know. To be
virtual hug. All right, to be continued. When the world gets back to normal, we'll hug each other.
Yes.
All right. Thanks again, Sidney.